Hi, welcome to Conversations with Bob. I'm here with my good friend Ken Gryger. If you bring up the gun thing, I think people on the gun control side just need to be honest and educated. After the shooting happened in Tennessee, and it always happens, we got to ban the assault rifle. There's a lot of issues to how you do something like that. I mean, we did it before, and it ends up with absurd consequences. But the issue being that person was in that building for 14 minutes, I believe, unresisted. No resistance, no security, no nothing, with a bunch of kids, totally unarmed, and killed 6 people. You can easily do that with a revolver. The most basic firearm that we have, a revolver. So this narrative that military-style weapon, it had nothing to do with it. As a matter of fact, when the police encountered this person, if you saw the video, it can be disturbing to some. She was killed immediately. So there was nothing. There's a case in Texas right now that a man who claimed self-defense was found guilty of murder. Texas, the Governor Abbott's talking about pardoning him, but it involved a Black Lives Matter protest. A Black Lives Matter protester was wielding an AK-47 with multiple magazines. The guy killed him with a revolver. So, this whole narrative that having this one gun is the cause of these shootings and eliminating this one gun is going to end any, I would argue there's no logic to it at all. You can ban all that type of weapon you want. It's not going to, you can't logically say it's going to stop one of these shootings. I mean, the best you can argue maybe is in certain circumstances, less people could be killed. But that's only circumstances where there's some resistance involved.
Yeah. I've always enjoyed your use of logic. You seem pretty, you just come out forthright, and use logic and reason, and it makes sense to me. So good job.
Well, I mean, feelings are important. They're a part of who we are, emotions. But if you say you're going to do something with a desired effect at the other end, I see that as a logical exercise. I'm going to do A, B, and I expect C to happen.
Right.
Is it going to happen that way? You can't pursue these solutions emotionally. You can't say, guns scare me. I don't like the kind of people that favor guns, so therefore we just need to get rid of guns. I mean, that leads to all sorts of hypocrisy in our society. Applying the same standard to all situations.
I still appreciate the argument, applying the logic that eliminating AK-47s isn't a reasonable and logical solution necessarily, for whatever reasons. Now, I wouldn't use that as an argument to not ban those forms of those kinds of guns, right, necessarily. But is it the solution or a solution? I think that's what kind of put into question, which for me at least raises the question, well, what gets at the heart of it? What's a better solution? And I think the whole cultural notion of right and wrong that we were talking about before gets to a better solution, right? People's hearts just aren't right? People don't know right from wrong, or there is none, or there is no right from wrong, or we've convinced ourselves that whatever I'm feeling, whatever life experience I've been through, grants me the right to go out and choose to do things that most, if not all, many others would consider an absolutely wrong thing to do.
Well, freedom is messy. Freedom is dangerous. And, one of the things that concerns me for my grandkids and forward is if we keep approaching everything from the standpoint of tight control, there's not going to be that freedom. I mean, the freedoms that we enjoy today, most of the world history was built on, the monarchy style, the strong people dominating and using the weak people. And, codified in our Constitution is this idea that, the highest authority in your life and in my life, each one of us is God. So God is the supreme authority. We have rights granted to us by God, and the government doesn't grant these freedoms. Free speech. If you read the Constitution, it doesn't say the government has to give people free speech. It says free speech exists before government. It transcends government. Therefore, government does not have a right to restrict it. The First and Second Amendments are very similar that way. And that's, so you could get into a slippery slope type of argument, but I think my bigger point is that if you're just constantly looking for government, control these people, make this happen, that's just going to lead to a world of eroding freedom. And something like personal responsibility, changing a moral standard, influencing people, that people can still be free and go, you know what, I don't think I'm going to do that because that might end badly for me. There's nothing wrong. There's no cost, right? There's no sacrifice to having that. I see people online, the Bible talks about we're supposed to be gentle as doves, but shrewd as vipers, shrewd as snakes. He tells his, disciples to go out like that. I see online sometimes people, Christians, who I would characterize more the dove, very gentle, and they post something or comment something related to prayer and God, and and then someone attacks them. I probably lean more towards the viper. So in those cases I've intervened and kind of defended the person. But one of the things I would challenge these people with is, and this is the unsaid part, is think about the person you're talking to. So if someone finds in their faith, they find hope, they find comfort, they find peace, what are you accomplishing by convincing them that they're wrong and there is no God? What good are you doing by advancing that with these people? And, they never have an answer to that.
Sure.
So, as logical as I am, and, cause and effect, there is a cause and effect here. Yeah. And it's an intangible. You can't really measure it. But, they'll just put the notion in someone's head to say, look, you're doing harm to people. Now, if you don't believe in God and things like that, that's fine. If you don't want that belief system in certain parts of government, that's fine. But don't go attacking someone online, some, person who's obviously a dove, offering up prayers and words of hope, and then come at them with some, atheist logic attack. I mean, you're not doing any good here by doing this.
Yeah. It makes me ask, well, what from a pastoral perspective, what's the source of their pain, right? That person's pain. That would cause them to feel like they ought to lash out. It's similar to Cain. Cain was offended, so maybe this person was offended in some way. They become jealous or envious of what others around them have, and so they're lashing out against it in some way. And that's just sad.
I 100% agree with that. But here's where we're with a little bit of a conflict with where I am now. If that person came to a point of saying, hey, I'm experiencing pain, or you knew them personally and you could say, hey, what is your pain? Perfectly fine with that. But there has to be often there has to be consequences. It's like the addiction thing. They say, well, we need to totally decriminalize and totally do that. If there aren't consequences to the addiction behavior, a lot of the people who do get clean will never happen. They'll die in that disease. So you're not always doing people favors by removing a consequence and accountability. So when I came to this realization, I started posting online. Sometimes I post things, it's like to get people to think, or like almost like a commercial to influence. Yeah. So I started when I was talking about the Nashville thing, I was referring to the killer as a killer. I won't name them as a killer. I was saying evil. I was saying the children are clearly in heaven. This person is, in eternal torment, period. That's what I was saying. And
Right.
to me, that was, now you can quibble. So if someone quibbled, one of my Christian brothers reminded me, at the very last second, they could have converted like the one man on the cross. Well, I know we've used that for a long time, so we're not supposed to judge and things, but I think the act was certainly evil. Do I know for a fact a person's in heaven or hell? Well, if I go by all the evidence, I mean, it's not an incantation. It's not a magic word that you say right before death. You have to be sincere. You have to sincerely die to self and submit to God to bring Jesus in. You can't just, if you're doing it for personal gain, it's not salvation.
Sure.
I mean, the men on the cross, the one that mocked, they're all dying on the cross. The one guy mocked Jesus. So even though he was on the edge of death, he still made it about himself. He still condescended and mocked Jesus. The other guy, with no chance of saving himself, completely surrendered and said, this is wrong. That he recognized who Jesus was. And that's why Jesus said, you'll be in my kingdom. Not because he said some magic word, but because he had a sincere heart change right there in that moment. He literally died to himself before he physically died.
Well, there's something extremely powerful right there in that thief's statement, acknowledging that Jesus was God. So recognizing that God exists, that's step one, right? Mm-hmm. And then acknowledging exactly why he was there and that it was wrong. It's a powerful faith statement. And Jesus rewarded that by saying, today you will be with me in paradise.
Right.
It's so great.
Forgiven for everything.
Yeah. So it is tough. We can't, I guess we can't say, what was in that person's mind or heart, but it would be hard to say from the evidence that we can see. It would be hard to say that they had a dying moment, a come to Jesus meeting, right?
Right.
God looks for the fruit of one's life, and in their dying moments, the fruit was anti-life, right? Anti-life giving. So you would suspect that God was not inviting them in with open arms. Yeah. I could support
now, for Christians, I would say this is one of the most powerful arguments against capital punishment, against the death penalty. If someone is on death row for whatever period of time, there is that opportunity for them to achieve, find salvation, to have a true life heart change. And, I guess even if with the death penalty, it's a long, long process. So that opportunity is still there. But, yeah, I mean, so, in this case, I saw the video. The person was shooting in a school. Boom, boom, boom. Police approached them. Drop your weapon. Boom, boom, boom. Dead. So, I mean, if this person really had received Jesus, I think, she would have dropped her weapon and said, hey. No. So, I mean, put it this way, there's zero evidence. Theoretically, it's possible, but there's zero evidence. So to use that argument to say we should never talk about the fact that act was evil and wrong, and that person, by the Bible and God, that person, unless they were saved, is suffering eternal punishment right now. And there's no evidence to show they were saved.
Yeah, I think in a sense, it reinforces a passage from Romans, first chapter of Romans, where it says, "And God gave them over to themselves."
Yeah.
So, when you look at that passage, it's saying that the consequence of the sin is its own punishment. That God's wrath and punishment wasn't even involved, right? They chose their own punishment in that sense, right? So, God gave them over to themselves. It's a powerful statement.
Yep. All right. Well, we're kind of long here. Is there anything else you would like to say before we wrap up?
Well, there's a few other things I'd like to say. I had an interesting conversation with my Wednesday morning guys, and we brought up the issue of guns, and there was a sense of nostalgia, right? Because most of these guys were brought up in a gun culture. The one in particular, he said that his grandfather, when he was 12, his grandfather took him out, and they had a hunting rifle, and it wasn't just a 22, right? And he respected his grandfather, and his grandfather respected the gun and taught him respect for guns. And so there was and that was supported by several others in the group who also grew up around guns, shot guns for hunting birds and game, and rifles for hunting deer. Western Pennsylvania, it's a hunting culture around here as well. And this was back in the 70s, right? So they look back at that time as they even talked about, I guess, there being gun clubs at the local high school level, right? And
junior high school. I learned to shoot in junior high school. That's the first time I fired a gun.
Did you? See, I didn't. I grew up in New Jersey. I wasn't around that. There was no. I went to a Catholic high school. There was no gun club. So I didn't grow up with that, but they looked at that as with nostalgia, and also looking at that culture at that time as being less violent, as being more law-abiding. It was saying something like you were saying earlier about there being this Christian ethic or Christian overlay. So they could, on culture. So they were looking at this period with nostalgia. I don't want to say Ozzie and Harriet years, but there's something about that all went hand in hand. A respect for guns, a raising up with a hunting culture, and less violent crime, less murder, less mass shootings or whatever. They put all that together to say, hey, we're missing something here. And I just want to go back to what's missing is the heart, right? This heart part of it, this God's challenge to Cain, hey, when there's something on your mind, now, so what is the solution? To talk about a broader cultural or community-based solution is, something else that Christianity has to offer. This sense of community, sense of family, where we're looking out for one another. We know one another's business a little bit, not that we're meddling necessarily, but if in fact we're correlating shootings with loners, for example, then where is the sense of community, the sense of family and fellowship that's looking out for one another to be that challenge, right? That when somebody's getting a little bit too angry or something, someone out there who's reaching out as a friend and say, hey, can we talk this through a little bit? So that it doesn't go as far as it did with Cain, for example, where the croucher was waiting at his door, urging him on to sin, where we can kind of tease that back and say, hey, look, you could take this to an extreme here that's not going to be a good outcome.
If this continues, gun rights are going to go away. I mean, it's just going to happen. It's a marketing scheme, right? They just the gun. You keep having the shootings. People are naturally afraid of guns. Younger people, as they old, it's going to go away. So I think it behooves anyone who values gun rights to try to contribute to real, meaningful change that's going to make a difference, that's going to actually address the problem and not to play politics over it. As soon as that happens, the next gun that will become the most popular most likely is going to be a 9mm handgun, because of the rounds that it holds, small, compact. In a lot of arguments, it's better anyway. So then they say, oh, that's a semi-automatic. We're going to ban that. And then you have a revolver. I mean, most revolvers now are double action, meaning you just pull the trigger. You don't cock and then shoot. You just pull the trigger. It's a semi-automatic too.
Right.
So, if you go down that path to where you say we're going to solve this by banning a type of gun, there's no end to it. I'll admit there's some circumstances where an AK-47 is going to give you an advantage, is going to cause more people to die. But if we were to ban them all tomorrow, and let's say it's a confiscation, they just miraculously disappear. The next shooting that happens, I don't see anybody sitting around the table going, boy, we're so glad there wasn't an AK-47 there. We solved the problem. 6 people died. Wow. If there were AK-47s, that could have been 10 or that could have been 12. So we fixed it. Good. Let's move on and talk about something else. That's not going to happen. The problem is still going to be there.
Right.
And, there will not be a measurable improvement if you get rid of the AK-47s. Right.
Yep. I guess to follow on that nostalgia idea, we can't bring back yesterday.
Oh,
right?
no.
But we can take a look at some of the features of that culture at that time, and we can attempt to rebuild them as well. So what is it about our culture that, as you to go back to way to the beginning to what you were saying about what is it that I can do today, right, to affect positive change, right? What can we do today that would affect positive change on our culture that might begin to prevent the next person who goes off that deep end and
we have that.
Uses it, pull
Unfortunately, people are abusing that, and social media is a big part of the issue. I don't know if you saw the Chris Rock comedy special recently, but he said that we don't have a whatever it was problem. We have an attention problem. That everything, if you look at how many of our problems are rooted in the fact of people wanting to go on social media and get attention. They do these outrageous, crazy things. People get into crazy stances all to get likes and follows. And so, I think that people are saying, what can I do to make the world better? And that's being sold to them as certain other things. For example, when the thing happened in the Tennessee Christian school, what's the good here? Well, the problem here is this is trans people being forced into this. This is because of all the hate and oppression of trans people. So you can make a difference, a positive difference, by standing up for trans people. And it's just totally distorted. It totally ignores. So depending on who the shooter is and who the victims are, you pick and choose who what your good is in this situation.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, people need to really start to reject this hypocrisy. Try to look at things, even yourself. We're all hypocritical. Right. So I think if you test every one of your, if let's say your guy's in the White House right now, so you take certain stances and you make certain claims, I would encourage everyone to remember those, because I've done this. And then when the next party takes office, see if you're on the same side of that issue. And if you're not, just change. Don't hide from it. I mean, I welcome that sort of change. So one I see all the time, and this is a simple one, how much money they spend on their vacations, how many days they spend golfing or going on vacation. It happened with Obama, okay? And, the Republicans attacked him. The Democrat people defended it. Yeah, but it's okay because this is a job and he's working when he's on vacation. Then Trump comes into office. It's evil that he's taking all these golf trips and he's wasting taxpayer money. And, of course, then the Republicans who were attacking Obama are defending him. And now we're back to Biden, and it's the same thing. So that's an easy one. But there are much more important issues that people do this with. They forgive questionable decisions on international relations and things like that if it's their party, and they attack when it's the other. And I think if everybody would look at themselves and try not to be a hypocrite, then things would get a whole lot better. This division would start to come together.
Amen to that. Yeah, I guess the example that I use is the whole border issue, right?
Yes.
With Mexico. So Trump did a bunch of things that were severely critical, the wall, all this stuff. And since Biden has been in office, I don't know that anything has changed, right? So whatever whatever Biden campaigned against Trump about border issues, right? I don't think when he got into office, he's changed anything. I don't know that
Well,
for a fact, but
it did. He stopped the construction on the wall completely.
oh, okay, right.
And he stopped the stay in Mexico. So what they were saying was they had a policy in place where if a person says, I'm leaving Guatemala because I need asylum, okay, I have an asylum claim, they then travel thousands of miles through Mexico and come to America and say, I need asylum. So under Trump, they said, well, that seems illegitimate. If you truly were here for asylum, why didn't you seek it in Mexico? Why did you just ignore Mexico completely and risk all this, spend money and everything to get here? So they called that, so they said that will not qualify you for an asylum claim immediately. Part of the issue being the courts are overwhelmed and things like that. Well, Biden eliminated those two things immediately.
Oh, okay.
People started, the amount of border crossings has skyrocketed. Now, depending on what news you watch, you may not even know this, but like records. I've had, Republican Trump haters tell me it hasn't changed. And it's like, it went from like 500,000, I think we're up to like 3 million a year. I mean, it's really skyrocketed.
Wow.
So not long ago, Biden resumed construction on certain parts of the wall, in the areas where people are flooding across, not the areas in the remote mountains and things like that, which I thought was never really going to happen anyway. But in the cities, they said, we have to build this wall. The, CPB said, people are just pouring across. We can't do anything. So they built parts of the wall again. And he, not too long ago, within a month, I think, reinstated that policy of denying asylum claims. If they travel through Mexico to get here, then they can't make a legitimate asylum claim. Now, people that were supporting Bush and vehemently opposed Trump on the immigration issue, not happy with Biden. But the problem is so great, and election season's coming up. So,
right.
It's time to make a change. Again, I really appreciate it, Ken. I thought this was great. And if you want to do this again, I have plenty of other topics in mind.
Okay. Yeah. If you felt that was, I felt like we weaved in and out of kind of what you're after. So
that's why I call it a conversation.
Conversation. We're just having a conversation. So meandering conversation. So
yeah.
Well, good. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Ken.
Have
a great day.
You too. God bless. Thanks, Bob.